Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're so excited about this event. We are here today to talk about pipeline generation. It's a team sport with the one and only James Lamberti. We're excited about the amazing content and takeaways you will get from this event. I have a poll open for you right now, audience. So click in the poll tab right here in your right-hand side and answer the question for us. James wants to know where you fall into the GTM team. It's right there in the screen. So go there and answer the question. We want to hear from you while I do my quick open remark. So let me go back here to my slides. Just give me 1 second. There we go. So we are here today to talk about pipeline generation with James Lamberti, and today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. We do that through our robust online forum. You can go there and ask questions. And with more than 30,000 members, I'm pretty sure no questions will be left unanswered and no problems will be left unsolved. We also have our quarterly summits. We just had one in October. You can get the recordings. I'm going to put a link in the chat in a few. And also, we are starting to get back into in-person events. So if you're not already a part of MSP, you're missing out, but you will be invited to join right after this event. But that's enough about MSP. I have some housekeeping notes for you. If this event is being recorded, so you'll be able to access all James' knowledge and wisdom later on the MSP website. And also, I was talking with James in the backstage. He said he loved answering questions. So you have a Q&A panel right here on your right-hand side. I'm hoping I'm pointing to the correct side, but you have a Q&A panel right there, and you have the chat right there. So please go ask all your questions because James love answering questions. And to test the chat, I want my audience to go into the chat and tell us where you're calling from. James, where are you calling from?
I am in California, just south of San Francisco in the Bay Area. Hello, everyone.
California, the beautiful California. I am in New York City, the other side of the country. We have people from Toronto, oh wow, Boston. We have people from everywhere. So that's enough from me. I'm going to pass to the one and only James. James, you can take it from here. You can introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about our sponsor for this event, Sales Intel, and just kick off the conversation. You have full control of the slides now. And once you're done, just invite me back here and I'll do some outro. Does that sound good?
Sounds good, Eduardo. Thank you. All right.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me today for the next 45 minutes or so. Good to be here. And thanks to Eduardo and the Modern Sales Pros team and community for inviting us. So my name is James Lamberti. I am the CMO at Sales Intel. Sales Intel, as you'll learn a little bit about through this conversation today, we are a B2B sales intelligence provider. We are sort of an up-and-comer and innovator in this space. I'll teach you more about that as we go through some examples. And then as for me personally, this is really a conversation about, 30 years of experience, having been a statistician and researcher for 1/3 of my career, then having been an enterprise seller for the other third of my career, and more recently joining marketing because frankly, my interest was not just selling one deal at a time, but selling the whole company, right? And the opportunity for us all to leverage data to do that is obviously something that appealed to me. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of my observations over the last 3 decades of pipeline generation and the need for it to be a team sport. And that'll make sense. That concept and theme will make sense to all of you who, as I saw the poll, we've got people from RevOps, from marketing, from sales. It's a perfect sort of way to think about this concept because we need to be operating truly as a team. And I would challenge all of you to think about as we go through this conversation, if we're honestly doing that. So jumping right in, My slides are not responding. Sorry about that. There you go. So there we go. Hopefully you saw that. So does this feel familiar, right? So when I talk to go-to-market teams, very often, very quickly in conversations, frustration occurs, right? The frustration of the RevOps team, is the data right? Are the systems talking to each other? Is the data hygiene intact? The marketing team, are we properly getting credit for what we're doing? Do we have the right budgets to succeed on the inbound lead flow? The outbound team, am I getting the right quality? Why am I not getting enough inbound? All of these frustrations and the internal machinations we take with each other as opposed to working together, right? And so really what I would propose is that we stop fighting, we start building, specifically start building pipeline. So what I want to do today is take you through a sequence of 6 steps that I use with every company I've joined. I've been with 11 different growth stage companies in my career. I'm now with Sales Intel as of 8 weeks ago. and really it's about 6 steps that are aligned to the growth and scale of your company, involving everyone in the go-to-market team with a shared responsibility to grow that pipeline. And these concepts may seem like they're specific to a startup or a growth stage company, but they really apply to a line extension and an enterprise, a new geography, a new persona, or even a new feature that you might be launching at a giant enterprise company. So it applies no matter what size company you're at, what size team you're on, from my observation. So there are 6 that we'll talk about. Number 1 is product market fit. Number 2 is what I call growth hacking. 3 is 0-day sales efficiency. 4 is something I call the pragmatic marketer. Number 5, scaling demand gen. And finally, the punchline is number 6, which is the creation of what I call the demand center. This is where the team comes together and we operate and drive pipeline generation and conversion as a team. So I'm going to take them one by one. And as we go through, I'm going to make sure to give you some very specific tips, a couple of examples. And really, this is going to feel like a lightning talk. And my hope is that you come away with some specific ideas that you can take back to your team and that practically speaking, you can apply and think about in your organization. So number 1 is product market fit. Healthy product market fit. This is super obvious. But I will tell you that at the core of pipeline generation, frustration, and concern is often people have skipped over this particular aspect, right? So when we talk about product market fit, we're talking about 3 things in your organization. Number 1, if you're scaling out or building out a team, my recommendation is you make product marketing absolutely your first hire, right? When I'm building out my marketing teams now, that is the first thing I take care of. Why? Right? The reason is simply that the subtlety and the nuance of understanding the words, the subtleties of your product's fit with your ICP is paramount, right? If you move too quickly or you assume things, you often end up confused, having spent a lot of money, a lot of time, not successfully generating or converting pipeline because you didn't slowly, methodically understand the fit of that feature or that product with the market, knowing the persona and really knowing the nuance of what's happening there. It is only that foundation that allows us to scale. And I can't tell you how often this is just a root cause issue, is because people didn't spend the time here, or even worse, didn't involve product marketing in actually truly understanding that, right? The other second tip is where we get into the use of sales intel and B2B sales intelligence, which is ensuring that that market fit is both quantifiable and personal, right? Quantifiable, what I mean today is you have access to, as a marketing team, as a RevOps team, as a sales team, you have access to technographic data, firmographic data, contact data, intent data, right? You should be leveraging all of that. And from day one, arming your CRM to quantify your sales addressable market, right? So that is, these 3 pro tips are what I do right when I join. And I used to use Sales Intel at several previous companies, right? Now I'm the CMO at Sales Intel, and I'll show you how I do it and how I take these steps, right? So a sales addressable market formula, very simply, defining the ICP with your technographic data, right? In my case, are they using a CRM and do they have a Cadence tool, right? Most companies in the world are going to qualify. For me, are you fundamentally in the US market? That's another critical ICP definition for sales intel, because we have this best quality data in the US market, right? And then, of course, the scale and customer readiness. You then know the persona fit. Again, for sales intel, it's RevOps, marketing, and salespeople. It's one of the reasons we're involved in this community. You then take that definition and multiply it times your ACV, and you have a definition of your addressable market that you can arm your CRM with, tagging every single account and every single content and where they fit in. And you can do that for every single ICP or market segment you've got. And I think if you honestly ask yourself today, when you analyze your data or when you look at account details in your CRM, do you know which segment they are in, which target market they are a part of, which ICP they're a part of, right? You have the ability today to fundamentally map your ICP and segments to your CRM as a starting point for addressability. This has all kinds of benefits. How big are each of these segments? What types of people and companies are in those segments, right? How should I think about my investment to go after these segments? So often we make assumptions about the size of the market and the market fit, and we actually quantify it, and it ends up being a different end game. So I can't tell you how simple this is, but how often it's overlooked. And forcing yourself to quantify and use data to do so is a powerful trick. So for example, I just told you, I focus on the US market. I'm focused on one of my ICPs is mid-market, frankly, mid-market companies who are currently using ZoomInfo, right? So I want to look for those types of companies. I want to look for personas that are marketing, sales, and RevOps leadership. I don't care about what vertical they're in. And again, I want to know that they've deployed a CRM and a Cadence tool. I now know that in the US market, there are 72,000 companies that fit that ICP. And that today I have about 270,000 contacts, specifically marketing, sales, and RevOps leadership contacts that are defined and mapped to my product market fit, one of my ICPs. So this is an example I wanted to show you using sales intel data. Now, number two, the growth hacker. So what do I mean by the growth hacker? This is obviously an emerging term. Some people call it a growth marketing. It's a lot of different terms for it. But really, this is all about making sure that from day one, you're earning lead flow before you start paying for it. That if there's one thing to take away from this concept, it's if you just start using paid advertising to drive leads before you've earned a relationship, then you're potentially going to have a very inefficient and very, failed experiment when it comes to your paid advertising. So how do I do it? Content. So this presentation, right, is actually true thought leadership, right? What I'm doing today with all of you is growth hacking, right? I'm working with modern sales pros. I'm creating content that is genuinely valuable. And at the same time, very transparently, I'm weaving in how I use sales intel, right? So this is authentic and healthy. And if you see value in what I'm saying, you're going to actually request a demo, or you're going to want this presentation, or you're going to use this advice in your own company. It's okay to be transparent about how your own product and feature fits in, but deliver that transparency in a thought leadership way through content. Voice a customer from day one. Those first few customers that use that new feature, that embrace your new product, you've got to actually work to get them to talk and verify and validate and confirm that they're actually willing to pay for it. Again, so often we get enamored with a feature or an idea in the back of the company, engineering or product, or maybe even marketing or sales. But when you actually go to fit it with the market, you can't get people to easily pay for it, right? So you've got to actually take the time to get voice of customer into the equation. And then anchor everything in SEO to start. That is going to be the way in which you bring in those organic leads. So this is a thick area. And then the final 2 points I'll make here that people often overlook is I hear very frequently that marketing automation and ABM are sort of late stage efforts. oh, I've got to be a much bigger company, or my feature or my geo or my new persona I'm attacking has to be further developed. I would say that those two things should be done very early on, right? Because those first few leads that you earn, creating that relationship through marketing, marketing automation and building on that permission relationship sets you up to scale. And ABM is another powerful way to very early on get to those first 50 or 100 customers that you know are innovative, that you believe will adopt that feature or product, and that's really an ABM play. So I would recommend those pro tips as growth hacking. And this is an example of what I mean by extending content assets. Simple concept, often overlooked, integrated campaigning. But we had a Sales Intel annual summit a couple weeks ago, right? We had 2 days of virtual conference. Our customers were there. We had our partners there. But we had that summit, but around that we had white papers. We had multiple webinars built off of it, right? We had social going out for weeks before and after. We had paid ads as offers driving to that event, not just trying to drive a demo, but driving to a permission relationship at the top of the funnel. This is growth hacking, and it's an example of, I think, something that is easily overlooked. When it comes to SEO, you have at your disposal today, certainly if you're using Sales Intel, but you may be using someone who competes with us, intent data. So here at Sales Intel, we have Bombora intent data. Intent data tied to your ICP in the area of conversation that your product or feature is addressing is a great way to get the language and the words and the scale or scope of your SEO strategy, right? So using intent data to inform your content marketing and your SEO strategy is a very easy, low-hanging, easy thing to do that is often overlooked. It gives you a chance to create authentic, quality content for your audience from day one, right? You can also learn from competition in adjacent categories that you want to disrupt. In my case, we're disrupting ZoomInfo, right? So I look at what they're doing, and I use content and I use SEO to make my brand known, to make it clear that you have an alternative in the market to ZoomInfo now. And then finally, invest in those technical aspects. Again, if there's a second hire I make, it's SEO. Establishing a firm foundation of SEO from day one in combination with product marketing is starting to build that foundational ability for you to earn leads before you pay for them. Let me continue here. All right, so this point. So again, marketing automation is a very efficient foundation for scale. All of that data, remember all that data we talked about in step one, right? Your ICP is understood. Every segment of the market is now mapped to an account. Every one of those accounts has metadata knowledge around it. All those accounts have context associated with it. All of that information can now be shared across your stack, right? Whether it's HubSpot or Marketo, whether it's your Cadence tools, right? You're set up to efficiently automate from day one, and you should take advantage of that fact in a modern data-driven world that we live in. And the second point around ABM is this is an excellent complement to early automation. So our own sales teams, right, when they're looking to connect with decision makers at target companies, right, they will actually use RevDriver, which you should go download right now, right? It's an extension right off of LinkedIn Navigator, and Chrome that allows you to look at someone you want to contact, verify, and get that information from us, right? And it's a free tool, right? No brainer to use this type of capability today. So moving on, this is an interesting concept, 0-day sales efficiency. So how many of you are working with your sales leaders, right? Or your sales leaders working with your marketing leaders, and you're debating the size of the BDR team, the size of the sales team, how much marketing spend you should have to drive inbound. This concept causes a lot of team dynamics that can be unhealthy, right? So the concept of 0 days efficiency is number one, always have a level of outbound, right? I'll explain the 30-70 rule in a minute, but outbound is a healthy and useful, important concept. If you're in the fortunate position to be 100% supported as a sales team by inbound from marketing, lucky you, but don't stop there, right? Force yourself to spend some percentage of your team's time achieving outbound. I'll explain why in a minute. The second point, pro tip here, and I'll get into some examples of how to do this, is you can model AE capacity, right, using intent data along with your own pipeline conversion rates. Again, we're in a world where we have the data and knowledge to know how big is our market, the addressable market, how much of that market is in market at any one time using intent data. I then combine that with the capacity of my sales team, and I know how big that sales team should be. And I can consider that I want some percentage of that time to be outbound, right? ABM outbound, ideally, to create a healthy environment. And then finally, the intent data to score, to do MQL scoring. So as you built up marketing automation layer, you can think of it in 3 chunks of knowledge. Number one is just the marketing activity response. Are they opening my emails? Are they attending webinars? Of course, you're going to have that. You're now going to have sales intel data about the ICP, right? Is this company in my ICP, right? Which ICP are they in, right? So you're going to have a product or market fit score is the second concept. The third is going to be intent data, right? That intent data should be leveraged for your MQL scoring, meaning when you see intent light up, that should be a flag, and you should score that, and oftentimes immediately MQL that based on intent. So that is pro tips. Let me show you examples. I'm going to skip through this. Sorry. I'm going to show you some examples. Sorry, I'm having trouble controlling the screen, everybody. Thanks for bearing with me. So healthy outbound is key. I'll give you a rubric or a concept that I use that I find to be a great way to partner with my CRO to understand how we should balance the marketing and sales investments we make. And I call it the 30-70 rule. It could be 60-40, it could be 80-20, but the concept is simple. 30% of the time, right, your AEs or your BDRs, depending on how you're set up, should be harvesting inbound, right? And the reason is because an inbound lead that comes in is going to move quicker, right? It's by definition, marketing has done the job of creating an environment, creating the awareness, creating the interest where they're raising their hand and they're coming in, right? So that is going to be 30% of the time, netting out probably 70% of your new logos, right? Conversely, 70% of the time, you're doing healthy outbound, right? So the key is this, that the majority of your time is outbound to ABM or target accounts, right? That are still accounting for a good percentage of your ARR pipeline build, but it's harder work. It's going to take longer. And the reason this is so important, there's 2 things, and I learned this from a guy named Bill McCadis. For those of you in the community, Bill may know Bill's name. I had the pleasure of having him as a mentor for a period of time. Bill was the CMO at Slack. He was one of the, I don't never know if he was the CMO at Salesforce, but he was very senior in that organization. And in both those roles, he was literally the person that took those companies into hyper growth. And what he shared with me at Slack was they waited too long to put an enterprise selling motion in place for Slack. Slack was an example of 100% inbound. It was product-led growth. But the reason you want to layer in this healthy outbound is because there's never a point in time where 100% of the market's going to be coming to you. It's rarely going to be that those key decision makers are going to come in through the front door. So you got to do the work to reach out to them. And often, the last point is this, often the outbound is going to net you the larger ACV deals. So 30-70 rule is real important. And The other most important thing here that I'll mention in this section is how do you know who's in market? Intent data. So again, I'll use an example from my ICP that I shared with you, right? US mid-market is an example. I know today from intent data who is looking or considering or researching B2B sales intelligence, the space I play in. And there are actually right now, there's actually in this answer, there's 8,000 companies, right? So there's 8,000 companies and about 15,000 people. I can take all that knowledge and again, use it for my MQL scoring. I can take all that knowledge and arm my DSP, right, to heavy up spend. Okay, the question is, are you doing this today? Are you leveraging this data in these ways to make your pipeline growth more efficient? And then finally, here is a great, I mentioned this at the outset of this, how you get to 0-day sales capacity, right? This is a sales capacity primer. Number one, how many accounts and contacts are in your ICP? What is your addressable market, right? 10,000 companies is different than 100,000 companies in terms of the size of team you need to address that part of the market. What percent are showing intent at any one time? In my example, I'm showing you that about 10 or so percent, 8,000 of the 72,000 companies in my ICP, I know are in market at any one time. I then know the capacity of an individual seller, including how long deals take, right? So obviously capacity is going to be impacted by, is my selling cycle 90 days, 30 days, 180 days? All of that comes together to give you an extremely data-driven understanding of how to plan capacity for your team. We've all been in situations where we doubled or tripled the size of the sales team because we thought we had product market fit. And guess what? All the efficiency broke down. You had frustration from the sales team because they never really sat back and truly, from a data-driven perspective, understood how big was the market, how much of it was in market at any one time, right? You can't artificially force the market to move. You can't artificially change the addressable market you've got. Just doing capacity planning on paper is not the right answer. So that is a favorite section, getting a lot of questions there. I will come back to questions. I see questions coming in. So pragmatic marketer, this is, again, because I come out of a market research and sales background for the majority of my career, I really embrace what's called the pragmatic marketing approach. And I believe that this is another area where pipeline generation, being a team sport, is often missed. And it's really just about be plain spoken, be clear, understand that your sales team is not operating in an ivory tower academic environment, right? They're in, trench warfare with their sales, trying to close and win deals. And so when I think about the pragmatic go-to-market approach, and this is a whole separate, deeper discussion that I won't cover with the short time we have, but I would recommend you think about the pragmatic go-to-market approach in 4 simple concepts. Number one, the amplification of your brand, right? This is the brand marketing team trying to create awareness and drive top funnel lead flows, right? Number 2 is educate the market. Very simple, but when I say educate the market, it's a capital M market. Market is prospects. Market is existing customers. Market is all your partners. Market is your own team, right? And it's amazing how often we are single-threaded. We only deal with prospects, net new, or we only deal with customers, right? Or we ignore partners. So educate the market, capital M, is an important concept. And this is kind of your mid-funnel, your content strength. Often your product marketing function is driving this along with your content marketing teams. Number 3, competency and confidence. How well connected is your sales team to your marketing team when it comes to educating the market, right? Again, creating really robust sales playbooks, making sure that there's a connective tissue between the amazing content and the education that your product marketing team's providing, right? And the confidence and competence of your sales team. Are they armed with that knowledge? Are they trained to talk about it? Bottom funnel lead flow conversion, handle objections, know how you compare to competitors. And then finally, building and closing pipeline efficiency. I will double click on number 4. That is the punchline of this entire webinar. And when I think about building and amplifying the brand position, just as an example, this is how simple and plain spoken I am. I answer 5 questions. That's it. 5 questions. What do we do? Right? I provide B2B sales intelligence data to help sales, marketing, and RevOps teams be more efficient in their pipeline generation and conversion. Right? Why is it valuable? Well, I just told you, I help make your teams more efficient. I can tell you who's in market. I can help you size your market. I can give you the contact data you need, right? I can leverage a 2,000 person research on demand team to fill contact gaps. I can also use that team to help you manage quality, which is a lost art in the industry we're in today. And I can give you great customer service as well. How do we uniquely deliver that value? I have a 2,000 person research on demand team that human verifies the 14 million decision makers in this country, right? And that particular ROD team and those human verified contacts are 95% guaranteed accuracy with an SLA in our contracts. How does it compare to what you do today? You're dealing with low quality. You're dealing with poor customer service. You're often being ignored, right? You have predatory contract terms. Very different experience with us versus the rest of the market. Why should you believe us? We launched 4 years ago. We have 1,000 customers today. That was a growth hack moment for sure, right? You all know I just gave you the sales intel pitch in less than 2 minutes in a very plain spoken, simple way. You may like it, you may not like it, but now you know who we are and how we position ourselves. Pro tips on this area: marketing is a listening function. When I think about pragmatic marketing, beware of the ivory tower marketing trap. Just don't get caught up in it. You don't know more than the market. You don't know more than your salespeople, right? The number one voice out there should be your sales team. Are they winning or are they losing? And if there's something not getting, educate them and train them. But you've got to listen to sales, listen to customer success. Again, overlooked. Listen to prospects and customers. It is not from marketing to position a company. It's for the market to position your company. Think of it in those terms, and you'll do a better job as a marketer of being relatable and plain spoken and helping your team confidently deliver what you're trying to deliver. The other thing is the emotion and motivation. You heard me talk about the very well understood frustration with customer service and data quality in the industry I serve. I'm directly tapping into that emotion, that reality. If you feel that emotion and reality, you're going to probably show interest in what we do. So that is some pro tips there. Finally, last 2 concepts: scaling demand gen. So this is, if you notice, we've gone through methodically to build up your go-to-market motion, right? With product market fit, right? With the use of data to arm your CRM with the size of your market, to capacity plan appropriately, to position well. Now, at this point, you've earned leads, you know the size of the market, you understand your investment profile, you've got your sales and marketing team in balance. It is at this point where I recommend you actually scale your demand gen, not before. So often, whether it's new features for an enterprise country, new markets, you just assume, you jump right to a scaled demand gen program, you spend a whole bunch of money, the leads don't come in, a lot of frustration, a lot of problem. It's because you leapt over a lot of critical foundational steps, thinking you could just spend money or trust what you learned in market A and find out it doesn't work in market B, right? So this is about scaling demand gen. Pro tips here. Number 1, this is an old school term, right? For those of you who've been around for a while, heavy up test, right? Build out that test grid, multiple channels, multiple offers, multiple creatives, and test it. You're going to, as you enter in and try to scale it, you're going to find pockets of performance that you can exploit. You're going to find pockets of performance that are not ready yet, that you have to work on and optimize. And then the other point is cohorting, right? For sales intel, we have relatively quick sales cycles. We're lucky that way. So I can look at everybody that came into pipeline in September, and by the end of November, I'll know how did that cohort perform? And how does that lead to predictability in the future, right? When I think of attribution modeling, again, everyone moves to multi-touch very quickly. I love multi-touch if you're ready for it. For me, I keep it simple. First touch, last touch, influence to start. Just those three concepts. And when you're looking at your marketing spend, you're probably looking at trying to measure it on first touch. I want to permission people into my marketing automated relationship, right? Then I look at last touch, what flipped them over the line to actually being a customer. And then influence, right? I ran a private event. I invited customers. Did I see pipeline movement from that private event? Influence. An event like that's probably not going to be first or last touch, right? But it's going to have influence. Third point here is establishing the value of view through. When you're spending on demand gen, there is view through value. There's like enormous amounts of research that suggest high quality, well targeted, with good creativity and content. It may not show up in direct response metrics, right? But it will show up in your organic lead flow. You'll see it come through a lift in people, for example, searching your brand term on Google. That can be an artifact of view through value. You can see a lift in your website traffic and people coming through those channels and ultimately requesting a demo. A lot of people like to hide, right? The passive buying motion is well understood now. Do not think that you're only seeing your direct response, right, for your paid campaign. You have to help your executive team understand that some percentage of the value of your paid spend will not be visible through direct response clicks. And there's ways to do it, and you just need to establish a way that works for you, get buy-in at the executive level. So when you look at the ROI, you have that buy-in. And then the fourth point here is, as you build your demand gen model, build in efficiency declines. Again, how many times have we taken a small test and said, all right, I'm going to 10x my spend and get the same result because I have a test grid that gave me that answer? That's never going to happen, or hardly ever going to happen, right? It's mostly you're going to see declines in efficiency as you ramp spend. It's almost a truism in how we spend money. So, work that declining efficiency in a reasonable way so that you're not surprising your CFO or your CEO when you perform at 70 or 80% of what you expected after scaling your spend. Even though that is a profitable spend, it may not be the same as when you did your test. All right. So I'll skip through this in the interest of time because we're getting to the end, and I want to get to the punchline, which is this. All this is here, right? These are all examples of what I just took you through, the demand center. This to me is really the point of this webinar, which is, if there's one thing you take away from this webinar, it's to go back to the office, whether you're in sales or rev ops or marketing, and create this team, cross-functional team environment as a way to actually generate and close pipeline and treat it like a team sport. And I would ask all of you to think about, I'm going to skip over the pro tips. Think about, do you have this type of cross-functional team today in the organization that meets every week or two together and authentically interrogates pipeline, right? And the demand center is essentially a cross-functional team that is exactly what it sounds like. It is the place that your team, the leadership across these various functions come together, look at the data, look at the pipeline, and together tear it apart in a productive, constructive way, right? So for example, ICP targets and territory planning. I talked about how to measure that sales capacity. This is where your rev ops and sales leadership look at the size of the market, look at how much inbound is coming in, look at how many accounts are in market at any one time using intent data. Now your sales team and your rev ops team are actually building out capacity coming into 2023 in a thoughtful way. You've got to consider pipeline generation. How effectively is your marketing team driving inbound right now? How much of that inbound is being harvested through all-bound or outbound activity through the BDR, SDR team? How much of it is coming from the AEs directly or from ABM? Every one of those buckets should be analyzed together. if you see your BDR functions killing it from a cost efficiency perspective, great. Double down on the BDR function while you work on marketing, while you work on sales, right? And then there's conversion. Oftentimes, the problem with generation and conversion is conversion. It's not the pipeline itself. It's mid-funnel. And you'll see that as a team. And then you'll know, okay, we gotta train our team better. There's a problem we're having. There's a persona we aren't talking to effectively. So it can often be just a training issue to convert pipeline better. And then, of course, RevOps, you've got to agree as a team on how you're going to look at data. You should all be looking at the same data. How often is marketing looking at one number? Sales is looking at a number. The CFO is looking at a number. I guarantee you that the odds are good that in every one of the organizations, and all of you listening to me right now, you are experiencing that. This demand center team breaks through that and gets everyone aligned. So going back to the pro tips, first touch, last touch, like it all matters. Key is alignment, right? Your RevOps team needs to work with you to say, this is how we're going to look at things and measure things together and make decisions. Shared KPIs, right? Again, like KPIs set in isolation create friction, right? So you got to look at the KPIs and be like, this is how much pipeline we need to generate as a team. These are the conversion rates we should have against it, right? And you have data and knowledge to do a better job of establishing those KPIs, and then together as a team figuring out how you get there, right? Getting exec buy-in, I mentioned this, on measurement is vital, all the way up to the CFO and CEO especially. Explain concepts like view through. Let them know that it may not be realistic for your outbound team to do, 50% outbound this year, given what you're seeing, or your marketing team to do 80% inbound. You've got to actually honestly assess where you're at and lay out that measurement and those targets. And then build career paths, right? Never stop outbounding. The other reason I didn't mention this earlier, but I'll mention it now. Like, another reason to constantly outbound is because it trains your BDRs, it trains your sales team. If you just have 100% inbound motion, eventually you're going to get to a point of scale where you can't sustain that, and you're not going to have a sales team trained on how to do that properly. So that's another rationale for forcing that outbound motion. That is it for me. I'll close with this and then get to questions here I see coming in. And by the way, when I sit down and look at the funnel, I'm an old school guy. I use the Serious Decisions funnel, but you can use this for existing customers, NRR. You can use it so you can use the funnel in various parts of the market. But this is an example. This isn't my sales intel data. This is an example I put together where you can look at this and you can immediately see that there's a problem right here in the middle of that, the MQL conversion rate to sales accepted lead. I'm doing pretty good on my closed one. I'm doing pretty good on my sales. I'm doing pretty well on my leads to MQLs. It's the conversion of MQL to sales accepted lead where I'm breaking down. This data, right, now helps you fine tune what that cross-functional team works on. You've just got to interrogate it together and be honest about it together and work on it together. So before we head to questions, I would invite you all, if you're interested, we have a great go-to-market assessment tool that helps you understand where you're at in this process. It's a really cool tool we built. You can go to our website and pick it up. And then, as Eduardo said, we've got all kinds of offers for you to try us out in a passive way, right? So for sure, if you're interested in intent data for specific technology or an area of interest to your company, we'll get you that. So there's a bunch of offers here. Rev Driver is an amazing tool if you want to try that out to get contacts that are qualified from an ABM or just an outbound perspective, and then prospects based on their tech stack. So a lot of offers there for you. And last thing I'll close with is we are going to be I've got a second webinar that I'm hosting with OpenPrize in a couple weeks. We'll make sure you're all aware of it. But it's actually OpenPrize works with massive enterprise customers to do everything I just described. And so they're going to take us through a real world example and some expert tips for operationalizing B2B sales data. With that, Eduardo, at 9:45, exactly on the dot, I'll hand it to you and we'll answer some questions.
Awesome. That was a perfect timing.
Yeah.
Thank the presentation was really good. I love the pro tips, and we have some questions in here for you, James. I hope you're
Huh?
ready.
Sure.
So Ursula is asking, is ABM still a good approach if your target are majority SMB?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Certainly, it's more challenging in that part of the market. But I would suggest that depending on where you're at, if you're a growth stage company, if it's a new feature, if you're a startup, like that, ABM is still your best friend, right? There's still individual contacts or individual companies that you at least suspect, if you've not been able to quantify, are your ideal customers, the innovators in that particular area. You should try to find them at that stage and use ABM at that stage. If you're already scaled, right? If you're already through a lot of these steps, and this question is coming, Ursula, from you as a more scaled SMB business that knows its market, has defined it, has done all the things I described, it's probably not going to be as effective, right? Because it's more expensive as a technique to drive pipeline and conversion. And if you're in the SMB, your ACVs, right, your average contract value is probably not high enough to warrant too much of an investment there. So that hopefully that gives you some guidance.
Thank you for the question, Ursula.
Thanks, sir.
Hani is asking, what is the best approach to initiate contact with a company or a decision maker in a company that I know could benefit from my product?
I mean, I would say that there's multiple. I would think of it as an integrated campaign and multiple techniques, right? First of all, if you can find the individual decision maker, which you often can using sales intel, right? Then I would add value to their inbox, add value to their LinkedIn profile, add value to their social world to start with. If you just go in and say, I want a demo with you, it's going to be tough. So I think that if there's no relationship at all, the mantra I try to use is add value to my world, earn my respect, and then hopefully ask for the discussion, right? And also recognize the passive behavior of somebody, right? I very rarely will openly raise my hand until I've done my own passive research. I've looked at the website. I've consumed some of your content. So if you're throwing quality in my inbox, I might raise my hand eventually after doing some passive looks if I'm truly your right target. So that's my best advice. The only other thing I would add to that is if you've got the money to do it, using highly targeted paid strategies is really good too. They see your brand here and there in their world, whether it's through the various paid channels. You can if you can be very targeted to keep your spends modest, again, to try to drive awareness into that individual.
Awesome. That was a great answer. Allison has a big problem on their hands. My sales executives feel they are not responsible for lead generation and that our lone BDR should present them with leads. How can I help them understand they are the masters of their universe?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's I really feel for you, Allison, because that is at the heart of this whole presentation. I recommend, if you can, you use the data constructs that I just shared with you. That's what I would do. I would take, in my case, I take the sales intel data I've got, and I literally define the ICP. I define the market size, right? I do all of that work. I let them know who's in market with intent data, right? And then I honestly share with them, look, this is the scope of the market we're going after. This is what percentage of the market is in market at any one time. You've got to be a participant in the pipeline generation process, right? Otherwise, we're not going to get to this whole market. And it's just, frankly, it's just not a realistic world for a decision maker to walk in the front door very often. You've got to have an outbound effort, especially against those decision makers, while marketing will often bring in users or champions, right? That's often what happens in lead gen is you're not at power yet. You're not at the decision maker. So that is where the team has to operate together in a thoughtful way. And I think using data in the ways I just described is going to be the best way for you to make that case. And you may need to get illicit support from the CFO or the CEO as well, because in this environment, in this modern era, almost impossible to think that marketing or ABDR are going to drive 100% of the lead flow.
Awesome. Michelle is asking, what are the best ways to contact customers after you know the intent? Are you open with knowing they are in the market for your product?
Yeah. So what it's similar to the answer I gave, I guess to the last two questions ago. I forget but it's similar in that you got the intent data. You know what customer you know that people are raising their hand, right? And you don't know for sure they're buying, but you see intent signals suggesting it, right? They're researching or they're looking and doing activity that highly suggests it, right? What I recommend you do with that intent data is identify those companies and accounts, right? In my case, again, it's 8,000 of the 72,000 of my addressable market. I know we're in market right now. I take those 8,000, I take the technical definition of those, I take all the context, and I leverage that, number one, to arm my DSP, right? To arm my paid ad strategy. And I will heavy up my spend on those target markets. I will put an emphasis on it from that perspective. The second thing I will do is make sure that from a marketing automations perspective, I score that from an MQL perspective and get that into the hands of a warm outbound motion. I will let my BDR and my AE team know that I'm partnering with to do outbound, that this is a warm outbound. We suspect they're in market. Here's the content and messaging and cadence you should use. Here are the companies and here are the contacts. It's all about prioritization and focus. It will make you more efficient. That's how I would do it. And
Awesome.
of course, that's what we do. That's how we help. So
I think we have time for two more questions. Jess is asking, you mentioned SEO as your second hire in marketing.
yeah,
What do you look for in that specific hire?
yeah, it's a good question. It is a very technical. It is a very technical hire. I will often start with an agency I trust, right? I will start with an agency I trust because there are very good agencies out there that can help with SEO. I will then get their help evaluating a full-time hire. It doesn't have to be very expensive. That's typically the way I do it, because I am not as much of an SEO expert as I need to be to fully evaluate the right candidate. But there is a lot of good advice out there about what you should look for in an SEO expert. And I look for someone who technically understands what's happening first and foremost, right? There's a difference between your SEO leader, which is a very technical role, and your content marketing leader, which is a creative domain expert role, right? And oftentimes those two individuals are not the same person. In fact, almost never are they the same person, right? So you have SEO informing, here are the keywords, here are the group term groups that are going to bring in our ICP, right? And then you need your content marketing leader to actually bridge that technical knowledge to the content you're creating, to the website you're building. Hopefully that gives you some guidance there. But I do get help in this area. It's a hard hire.
Awesome. We have two questions about third-party SDRs. So Caroline is asking, any tips for success when using contracted, outsourced SDR resources? And also there's one in the chat by Joel saying, our leadership tends to over-prioritize pipeline over more TOFU strategies. When we then end up spending lots of money on third-party SDRs and other pipeline generating activities. How can I take steps to get buy-in from more TOFU strategies? Is that correct?
Yeah.
TOFU?
Yeah. Tofu
Did I say right? Tofu. There we
top
go.
of funnel. Top of funnel as tofu, mofu, bofu, right? Top, mid, bottom. I kind of think that way too. So I understand that acronym. All right. So yeah, I mean, again, over the years, I've gotten to where I have look. There's a lot of SDR firms out there. It's a tough one that I've tried, and I've gotten to where I know a couple of firms that I really trust. I'm happy if you contact me to share them with you. I think regardless of the firm you hire, I think you need to always have a trial period and always make sure that you train and certify them. I think the biggest gap of performance is often the training and certification of an outside firm to actually represent and understand the content instead of just pounding and almost being kind of spammy. So I would highly recommend that you, whoever you hire, there's a trial period that you contractually make sure that you can move through individuals, because just like your own team, the advantage of third parties, you should be able to get rid of folks that are not performing, retain those that are, and keep cycling through until you get to a performance that's acceptable, right? And that's reasonable. But the responsibility for you is training and certification, good cadences. That's got to be a part of it. And then on the tofu, it comes, that's the demand center concept. What I would do on the tofu question is I would basically use financials, right? And show them that, look, my top funnel lead flow is costing X amount, right? Include that view through value. We're spending Y amount on our BDR function. We're spending Z amount on our AEs, right? This to me is a financial analysis. If you do that properly and look at the cost versus the leads, right? You'll often find that people are underspending on tofu, right? And it's just, they're not realizing it is more efficient if I invest more there and maybe provide that BDR, SDR team warm inbounds, right? So that's what I recommend you do, is that you literally look at it financially and you look at it through the demand center, right? With the leadership team who can make hard choices about what financially is working, what levers actually financially working. So I hope that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are going to wrap things up in here. Shweta, I see your question. The sales intel team will get in touch with you via email if that's okay. But thank you, James, for this amazing presentation. We love the pro tips and everything that you taught us today. Thank you, Sales Intel, for sponsoring this event. It was amazing, wonderful. They got us this wonderful speaker and this wonderful content and all the freebies that I put in the chat there. So make sure you check the sponsor booth and request a demo with Sales Intel. They're doing great things and they will help you get your marketing aligned. The recording and key takeaways will be available on our website shortly. And don't forget to check out our upcoming events once you're there to check this recording. Stay safe and I'll see you next time. James, we can go backstage to hang out a little bit. Thank you, audience,
Thanks,
for coming.